A woman from a bustling city marries a man who has lived his entire life in the forest with his tribe. Her new husband is illiterate and has never been to a city, and the same goes for his family and tribe. After the wedding, the woman moves to her husband's village. On her first morning there, she searches for her toothpaste but can't find it anywhere. She checks every bathroom, looks around the house, and even searches outside, but there's no sign of it. Finally, she sees her brother-in-law sitting outside and eating something from a tube. Furious, she rushes over and slaps him. The brother-in-law starts crying and runs to his older brother to complain. "Big brother, your wife slapped me." The husband, concerned, asks, "Why did she slap you?" The brother-in-law replies, "Because I was eating the toothpaste." Hearing this, the husband slaps his brother-in-law again and says, "You should have eaten it with bread." 1. A businessman visits Japan for the very first time. He checks into a hotel and is shown around his room. He notices that there is no toilet paper, so he nervously asks the hotel porter about it. "Well," says the porter with a smile, "this is Japan. Our toilets are incredibly advanced. Everything will be taken care of by the buttons on the side. However," the porter warns, "only use the first 2 buttons. The third button is strictly for women." Later that evening, the businessman sits on the toilet, glances at the buttons, and cautiously presses the first one. A gentle stream of water thoroughly washes his rear. Startled but intrigued, he presses the second button, and a comforting gust of warm air dries him off. He sits there for a moment, eyeing the third button with curiosity, and finally decides to push it. He wakes up in a hospital bed, disoriented, with a nurse watching over him. "Where am I? What happened?" he asks, bewildered. The nurse looks at him and says, "You are in the hospital. Toilets in Japan is very advanced. You press the extractor button." 2. There are a pair of twins named Ving and Ling. One day, Ving decided to go to the town hall to change his name. Ling, being the supportive sister, offered to give him a lift there. When they arrived, Ling sternly reminded Ving that it would bring disgrace to their family if he changed his name to Lee. But Ving, determined, took a form and quickly filled it out to change his name. As soon as he sent off the form, he started to feel a wave of regret. When he asked how to revoke the form, he was informed that there would be a small fee. Ling, always ready to help, reached into her purse and was just about to hand over the money when suddenly... Their father bursts through the door, runs up to Ving, and embraces him tightly. With a voice full of emotion, he says, "Don't stop, be leaving," then turns to Ling and adds, "Hold on to that feeling." 3. An older woman, well past childbearing years, went to a walk-in clinic where she was seen by a young new doctor. After about 3 minutes in the exam room, the doctor told her she was pregnant. She burst out the door, screaming as she ran down the hall. An older doctor stopped her and asked her what the problem was, and she told him what had happened. After hearing her out, he sat her down in another exam room and marched back to where the first doctor was and demanded, "What is the matter with you? That lady is over 60 years old, has 4 grown children and several grandchildren, and you told her she was pregnant?" The young doctor continued to write on his clipboard, and without looking up, he asked, "Does she still have the hiccups?" 4. A guy lands a job at a warehouse and immediately stands out for his exceptional work. His superiors are incredibly impressed. However, on his first Monday, he calls in and says, "I can't make it in today, I'm sick." The rest of the week, he works so hard that he does the job of 2 men, leaving his boss even more impressed. But then the next Monday rolls around, and once again he calls in, "I can't make it in today, I'm sick." Curious and concerned, his boss calls him into the office the following day for a talk. "Listen, you're an outstanding worker," his boss begins, "but you can't keep calling in sick every Monday. What's really going on?" The guy hesitates before explaining. Well, my brother-in-law goes out drinking every Saturday night. When he gets home, he beats my sister. So on Sunday, she calls me, and I go over to comfort her. She's emotional and grateful, and we start hugging. Then we get closer, start kissing, and, well, one thing leads to another. Ooh. The boss is shocked. Wait, what? Are you saying you sleep with your sister? That's sick. The guy nods and says, I know, that's what I keep telling you. I'm sick. 5. One day, a man walked into a sporting goods store looking to buy a rifle. The man had never been hunting before and asked the clerk if he could recommend a rifle. Oh, yes, the clerk said. I'm not a very good shot, but I've done quite a lot of hunting in my day, even did some big game hunting with my brother-in-law. The man responded, No way, did you get anything? I sure did. We were in the African jungle when we suddenly stumbled upon a monstrous crocodile. He was a mean one, too, with scars all over his face. This was surely one bad croc. My brother-in-law said he wanted to wrestle it and take a picture afterward, so he crept right up to it until they were face to face, nose to nose, eye to eye, tooth to tooth. The giant croc stretched its massive jaws, preparing to take a bite out of my brother-in-law. Naturally, I couldn't let that happen, so I raised my rifle and shot him right between the eyes. Amazing, said the man. Yeah, and I had this fancy belt made after I got back to our camp. Oh, wow. So the belt is genuine crocodile skin. No, the belt is made out of genuine brother-in-law. 6. A policeman comes home from work early and finds his wife in a pair of boots he's never seen before at the door. He starts running around the house. He opens the bathroom door, looks inside, and says, No one here, so where is he? He goes to the kitchen, checks under the table, says, No one here, so where is he? He goes into the bedroom. He lowers himself to look under the bed. From under the bed comes a hand with a $10 bill. The policeman snatches the money, stands up, and says, No one here! So where is he? 7. So a German, an Englishman, and an Irishman were all in Saudi Arabia, sharing a smuggled crate of booze when they were caught by the Saudi police. The mere possession of alcohol is a grave offense in Saudi Arabia, so they were all sentenced to death. However, after many months and with the assistance of skilled lawyers, they managed to appeal their sentences down to 20 lashes each with the whip. As they were preparing for their punishment, the sheikh announced, Since today is my first wife's birthday, she has requested that I grant each of you one wish before your whipping. The German was first in line. After considering his options, he said, Please tie a pillow to my back. This was done, but after only 10 lashes, the whip had torn through the pillow. When the punishment ended, the German had to be carried away, bleeding and sobbing in pain. The Englishman was next. After witnessing the German's ordeal in horror, he requested, Please tie 2 pillows to my back. This time, it took 15 lashes, but the pillows were again shredded, and the Englishman was led away, bleeding and moaning in pain. The Irishman was the last one up, but before he could say anything, the sheikh turned to him and said, You come from the most beautiful part of the world I have ever seen. Because of this, you may have 2 wishes. Thank you, your most royal and merciful highness, the Irishman responded. In recognition of your kindness, my first wish is to receive not 20, but 100 lashes. Not only are you an honorable man from a stunning island, but you are also very courageous, the sheikh said with admiration. If 100 lashes is what you wish for, then so be it. And what is your second wish? The Irishman replied, Tie the Englishman to my back. 8-year-old. An elderly Florida lady finished her shopping and returned to the parking lot, only to find 4 men in the process of stealing her car. Without hesitation, she dropped her shopping bags, drew her handgun, and screamed at the top of her lungs, "I have a gun, and I know how to use it! Now get out of the car, now!" The four men didn't wait for a second warning. They bolted out of the car and ran like their lives depended on it. The lady, still trembling with adrenaline, calmly loaded her shopping bags into the back seat and got into the driver's seat. But as she tried to put her key into the ignition, her hands shook so badly that she couldn't get it to fit. She tried again and again, but the key just wouldn't go in. Then it dawned on her why. This wasn't her car. She looked around the interior and realized it wasn't just the unfamiliar keyhole. It was also the football, the frisbee, and the two 12-packs of beer sitting in the front seat that seemed out of place. A few minutes later, she found her own car parked just 4 or 5 spaces down the row. Embarrassed, but relieved, she quickly loaded her bags into her actual car and drove straight to the police station to report her mistake. When she recounted the story to the sergeant, he couldn't stop laughing. He then pointed to the other end of the counter, where 4 pale and shaken men were nervously reporting a carjacking by a mad, elderly woman described as white, less than 5 feet tall, with glasses, curly white hair, and wielding a large handgun. No charges were filed. 9. One day, a ranger decided he wanted to get himself some genuine gator boots. But being a ranger, he wasn't about to just buy them from a store. He was going to get them straight from the source. So he heads out to the bayou to find a gator and make himself some new shoes. As he arrives at the edge of the bayou, he comes across a local man. The ranger asks him where he can find a gator. The local man gives him directions and warns. "By the way, keep an eye out for a couple of Marines. They went in a few days ago and haven't come back yet." The ranger follows the directions and ventures into the bayou. Sure enough, he soon spots 2 Marines standing waist-deep in the murky water. He glances around and notices the shore littered with dead gators. Just then, a large gator swims up and lunges at the Marines. The 2 soldiers spring into action, wrestling the gator until they finally kill it. They drag the beast to the shore, flip it over, and carefully inspect its feet. One Marine looks up in frustration and says, "Dang it, this one ain't got no boots either." 10. While making his rounds on a cruise ship out at sea, a porter stumbles upon a homeless man sleeping in one of the lifeboats. He wakes the man up and asks, "What are you doing here?" "I'm homeless, obviously," the man replies, "just looking for a place to lay my head." The porter, irritated, says, "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't toss you off at the next port, or right here in the middle of the ocean." The homeless man, unfazed, responds, "Look, I may not look like much, but if you ever need something to entertain the passengers, come to me. I'll put on a show they'll never forget. Just give me a room, and I'll be there day or night." The porter, intrigued by the man's confidence and eager to see what he can do, talks to the captain. The captain, more amused than concerned, agrees to let the homeless man sleep in a janitor's closet down on the bottom deck. A few days later, a bad batch of breakfast gives all the ship's entertainers food poisoning. Desperate, the porter rushes down to the janitor's closet and bangs on the door, demanding the homeless man put on his promised show. "All right," says the homeless man, "set up a 75-foot-tall diving board over the pool. I'll be up in 10 minutes. The porter, skeptical but out of options, scrambles up to the deck and alerts the crew. They manage to rig up a makeshift diving board towering 75 feet above the pool and announce the change in entertainment to the guests. Soon, the entire ship is gathered around the pool, eager to see what's about to unfold. The homeless man climbs the ladder, reaches the top, and peers down at the dizzying drop below. With a deep breath, he bounces on the board twice and leaps off. The crowd collectively gasps as he hurtles down. only to miss the pool entirely. Instead, he crashes straight through the deck, then through the dining lounge below, and continues through the kitchen, first class, second class, and third class decks, even plowing through the animal holding room. Finally, he crashes into the engine room and comes to a stop after bouncing off the engine. The crowd, peering through the gaping holes left in the ship, watches in stunned silence. Then, to their astonishment, the homeless man springs to his feet, dusts himself off, and gives a grand bow. The crowd erupts in wild applause as the homeless man makes his way back to the deck. The porter, utterly amazed, rushes up to him and asks, "How in the world did you survive that?" The homeless man grins and says, "Oh, I've been through many a hardship in my life." 11. In a hotel room at night, two neighbors do not let a third one fall asleep. At night, in a hotel room, two neighbors do not let a third one fall asleep. They tell various political jokes. He tries to scare them. "The KGB is listening to everything here." Those two just laugh and continue. Then he goes out and asks the room attendant to bring to the room 3 cups of coffee exactly 5 minutes later. He returns, leans to the ashtray and says, "Comrade Major, 3 cups of coffee to our room, please." The attendant brings coffee. Stunned neighbors go to bed. In the morning, the Joker wakes up alone. He asks the attendant where his neighbors are. She replies, "At night, the KGB swooped in and took them." "And they did not take me? Why?" "Comrade Major said he liked your ashtray joke." 12. A father overheard his daughter praying in her room one night. Daughter: "God bless Mommy, God bless Daddy, God bless Grandma, and goodbye, Grandpa." Dad, concerned: "Sweetheart, why did you say goodbye to Grandpa?" Daughter shrugs: "I don't know, Daddy. It just felt right." The next day, Grandpa unexpectedly passed away. The dad dismissed it as a strange coincidence. A week later, he heard his daughter praying again. Daughter: "God bless Mommy, God bless Daddy, and goodbye, Grandma." Sure enough, the next day Grandma passed away. Now the dad was starting to think his daughter had some kind of eerie power. Another week passed, and once again he overheard her praying. Daughter: "God bless Mommy, and goodbye, Daddy." The dad was terrified. He couldn't sleep that night, haunted by the thought of his impending doom. The next morning, he rushed out of the house early and stayed at the office all day, too afraid to go home. He kept watching the clock, thinking if he could just make it to midnight, he'd be safe. Finally, the clock struck 12, and he let out a huge sigh of relief, convinced he had dodged death. When he finally got home, exhausted, his wife met him at the door. Wife: "Honey, what on earth happened to you today? Why are you so late?" Husband, still shaken: "I don't know, sweetheart. I just had the worst day ever." Wife: "You think you had a bad day? Our gardener suddenly dropped dead while mowing the lawn." Thorfinn: "The other night I was invited out for a fun evening with the girls. I promised my husband I'd be home by midnight. I swear," I said confidently. But as the night went on, the margaritas kept flowing a little too freely, and before I knew it, it was 3 a.m., and I was more than a little tipsy as I made my way home. As soon as I stumbled through the door, the cuckoo clock in the hallway sprang to life and cuckooed 3 times. Realizing my husband might wake up and notice the time, I quickly came up with a brilliant plan. Well, it seemed brilliant at the time. I cuckooed another 9 times to make it sound like it was midnight instead of 3 a.m. Feeling pretty proud of my quick thinking, even in my very inebriated state, I headed to bed, confident that I'd successfully avoided any trouble. The next morning, my husband casually asked me what time I got in last night. "Oh, midnight," I replied, trying to sound as normal as possible. He didn't seem suspicious at all. Phew, I thought, I really got away with it. But then he said we really need a new cuckoo clock. Puzzled, I asked him why. He replied, "Well, last night our clock cuckooed 3 times, then said, 'Oh, crap,' cuckooed 4 more times, cleared its throat, cuckooed another 3 times, giggled, cuckooed twice more, and then tripped over the cat and farted." 14. A man is out on the lake in his boat with a bucket full of fish he had just caught. A wildlife officer spots him and pulls his boat up alongside. Seeing the bucket of fish, the officer asks to see the man's fishing license. The man casually replies, "Oh, I don't need a fishing license." The wildlife officer, eyeing the bucket, says, "You definitely need a license to catch fish. I can see you've been fishing today. You've got live fish right there." The man grins and says, "Oh no, officer, these aren't just any fish. They're my pets. I brought them out here for a little swim. They like to enjoy the lake just as much as I do." "Pet fish?" the wildlife officer replies, raising an eyebrow. "Absolutely," the man insists. "I let them out of the bucket, they swim around and have some fun, and when I whistle, they all jump right back in. They're very well trained." The wildlife officer scratches his chin, intrigued. "Well, I've never heard of such a thing, but I've got to see this." The man nods confidently, then tips the bucket over, releasing the fish into the lake. He calmly turns to the officer and waits. After a moment, the officer says, "All right, let's see it. Call them back." The man looks at him with a blank expression and asks, "Call who back?" "Your pet fish!" the officer exclaims. The man simply shrugs and says, "What fish?" 15. When Putin began his first term in office in 1999, he asked the outgoing president, Boris Yeltsin, if he had any advice since he had no prior experience in politics. Yeltsin reportedly handed him 2 envelopes and said, "If things go bad, open the first envelope. If things go really, really bad, open the second envelope." In the late 1990s, things indeed got really bad. The central bank had defaulted in 1998, and the effects rippled through the country. Unemployment soared, stores were empty, and people were out in the streets, hungry, angry, and protesting. Desperate, Putin reached into his bottom drawer, pulled out the first envelope, and opened it. Inside, he found a small typewritten note. "Blame your predecessor." So, Putin blamed Boris Yeltsin, his predecessor, for Russia's woes. He called the dissolution of the Soviet Union the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, and urged his compatriots to give him time and power to make Russia great again. Fast forward to 2022. The central bank is near default, people are protesting in the streets, the economy is in shambles, and a war isn't going as planned. One can only hope Putin hasn't forgotten about the second envelope in his bottom drawer. Because in that second envelope, there's a neatly typewritten note that simply reads, "Prepare 2 envelopes. 17. A man is sitting in a club alone. After a few beers, he needs to visit the restroom. The restroom is empty except for one man by the urinal. The man walks over to the urinal and starts unzipping his pants. He glances over at the other man and notices that his head is constantly twitching. The man feels a bit ashamed for looking, but is also curious about the twitching. The twitching man is finished doing his business and starts to walk away. The man's curiousness gets the better of him. "No offense, but why are you twitching like that?" "It's due to a war injury. I was in Vietnam." The twitching guy leaves and the man starts doing what he came to do. As the twitching guy is leaving, a dwarf comes into the restroom and goes straight over to the urinal. The dwarf stands next to the man, and after a few seconds, the man notices that the dwarf is also twitching his head. "Hey, were you also in Vietnam?" "No, it's just splashing like hell." I'm 18. A French, a German, and an Italian spy are captured one day. The captors grab the French spy, take him to the next room, and tie his hands behind a chair. They then proceed to torture him for 2 hours before he finally cracks, answers all questions, and gives up all of his secrets. The captors then grab the German spy. They tie his hands behind the chair in the next room, too, and torture him for 4 hours before he finally cracks and tells them what they want to know. They then grab the Italian spy. Once again, they tie his hands behind the chair and begin torturing. Hours go by, and the spy isn't talking. Then 8 hours, then 16, and after 24 hours, they give up and throw him back into the cell. The German and French spy are impressed and ask him how he managed to not talk. The Italian spy says, "I wanted to, but I couldn't move my hands." 19. A pregnant woman enters the delivery room with her husband. The doctor tells them that a new scientific breakthrough has been achieved. A way to transfer pain felt from one person to another. This way you can share the pain between the two of you if you wish. The husband and wife agree. "Great," says the doctor. "Considering men don't come close to experiencing childbirth, we'll start low and work our way up. Let's open up with 10%. The husband says he's fine, and they can increase the load. The doctor complies and increases it to 20%. Still, the husband claims he's feeling fine, so the load goes up to 30%, then 40%, 50%. It keeps going until the husband is taking 90% of the pain. The doctor commends the husband for being able to sustain such a great deal of pain. A few days later, they arrive home, seeing the mailman dead on their front porch. 20. "Well, I'm in the emergency room. I'm not sure how many bones are broken, so today is not a good day. I decided to go horseback riding, something I haven't done in many, many years. It turned out to be a big mistake. I got on the horse and started out slowly, but then we went a little faster. Before I knew it, we were going as fast as the horse could go. I couldn't take the pace and fell off, but caught my foot in the stirrup with the horse dragging me. It just wouldn't stop. Thankfully, the manager at Toys R Us came out and unplugged the machine. He actually had the nerve to take the rest of my change so I wouldn't attempt to ride the elephant." 21. Han Solo is chilling in his room when suddenly the light goes out. He tries to fix the bulb, but after an hour of laborious effort, he gives up. He heads over to Yoda's place to see if he can help. As Yoda opens the door, he spots a huge machine with flashing lights beeping in the middle of the room. "What's this?" he asks Yoda. "A cloning machine, this is. Your problem, solve, it will," exclaims Yoda. Solo nervously steps into the machine as Yoda cranks it up to max. Smoke fills the room, and as he steps out, 5 Han Solo clones materialize out of thin air. "That's incredible," they all say at the same time, and they head back to Han's place, walking together in an eerie unison. With a combined effort, they easily fix the bulb. Afterwards, he knocks on Yoda's door and thanks him for his help. "Achieve this solo, you would not," says Yoda. "Only many Hans make light work." A handsome man went into a hotel and asked to see the boss. The client, "Is room 39 empty?" The boss, "Yes, sir." The client, "Can I book it?" The boss, "Of course you can." The client, "Thank you." Before going to the room, the client asked the boss to provide him with a black knife, a white thread 39 centimeters, and an orange 73G. The boss agreed, though he was surprised at the weird things the client asked to have. The client went into his room. He didn't ask for food or anything else. Unfortunately for the boss, his room was next to room 39. After midnight, the boss heard strange voices and noise in that client's room, voices of wild animals and of utensils and dishes being thrown on the floor. The boss didn't sleep that night. He kept thinking and wondering what might be the source of the noise. In the morning, when the client handed the keys to the boss, The latter asked to see the room first. He went to the room and found everything all right. Nothing unusual. He even found the thread, the black knife, and the orange on the table. The client paid the bill and gave the bellboys a very good tip and left the hotel smiling. The boss was in a shock, but he didn't reveal what he heard to the bellboys. In fact, he started to doubt himself. After 1 year, the client showed up again. He asked to see the boss again. The boss was in a puzzle. The client asked the same things. Room 39, black knife, white thread 39 zabipe, and an orange 79 dree. This time the boss wanted to know the truth by all means possible. He spent a sleepless night waiting for something to happen. After midnight, the same voices and noises started, this time louder and more indecipherable than the year before. Again, before leaving, the client paid his bill and left a large tip on the table for the bellboys. The smile didn't leave his face. The boss started searching for the meaning of everything the client asked to have. Why did he ask room 39? Why the white thread? Why the black knife? In fact, the boss didn't arrive to any convincing answer to all these questions. The boss now was eagerly waiting for the month of March, the month in which the client showed up. To his surprise, on the first day of March, the same client showed up. He asked the same questions, wanted to book the same room, wanted to have the same things as before. The boss again heard the same noises, this time more louder than before. In the morning, when the client was leaving the hotel, the boss apologized politely to the client and asked to know the secret behind the noises in the room. "If I tell you the secret, do you promise to never reveal it to anyone else?" "I promise I will never let anyone know." "Swear?" "I swear I won't reveal your secret." So finally the client revealed his secret to the boss. Unfortunately, the boss was a sincere person. Until now, he hasn't revealed his secret to anyone.